Well, thanks for joining us for some of the content that we have been uploading here to our channel. And I'm gathered here with several staff members and as well worship leaders that help in our ministry. And just quick disclaimer, this has been taped on March 22nd. So things may have, in this fluidity, changed since then. So we may be sheltering at a later date since this has been recorded. But we are still here. We just had our second service under this new normal. And so just want to ask some questions among all of you. And it's very open-ended, but loaded as well. How are you processing all this new reality?
Yeah, I think for us, I have the mic, so maybe I'll start.
The sanitized
yeah, that's right.
mic,
sanitized
so
mic.
We're clear.
Yeah, it's just been just a disorienting, week. I just, just kind of maybe a week and a half ago, just getting, news stories. Thankfully, we live in the technology age where I'd get texts from my older kids at West High School, and they're like, "Hey, have you heard the NBA has been canceled?" And then, "Have you heard the Masters has been canceled?" We're very much a sports family. And then it just started to hit home and became more personal for us. Just my oldest son, Kobe, who's a junior at West Henderson, called and said, "Hey, have you heard that North Carolina is going to stop the sports season just for the foreseeable future, and our last game is tomorrow night?" And so, what really stood out to me is in that moment wanting to care for him, but then dealing with all my own realities of what was going on in my heart, what I was feeling, trying to, as a dad, care for him in that moment, and just being really thankful though, because he immediately shifted towards his focus being on the seniors, and instead of just kind of thinking about himself, he kind of went to, "Hey, I'm just really upset, that these seniors are 3 games into their season, and we haven't even planned a senior night." And thankfully, several of the parents on the team actually scheduled a senior night, not only for the varsity baseball team, but for the girls softball team. And just him asking questions like, what is that going to mean for them having a prom? And I just thought of that, just thankful for that response, in my teenage son. And thinking of that response for him, there's been a lot of suffering that, he's had to go through, and several of our kids have had to go through in the past year, and how God has used that suffering in their life, to grow empathy. And that's something as a parent, that I pray for myself to grow in that, but also, you want that for your kids. And that's something where, there's just been a lot of different emotions for us personally, and trying to walk through, and we maybe can talk about this, different personalities and how we process as different Enneagram numbers, the reality of this. But just kind of thinking, is this going to be something God's going to use to grow empathy in my own heart for community, not just to be a word, but to really just have a fuller perspective and fuller meaning, and just hoping for that. Just the thought of, when we're able to worship as a group, just wanting to like hug every single person when it's, just having words like social distancing being thrust upon us, that there's been this forced stillness that we've all kind of been given. And a lot of times in life, you kind of have these, like a slow kind of breaking before you stop. But I think for all of us, it was just, the brakes were slammed on the pace of our lives. Those things that we may even base our identity in, or our kind of normal rhythms. And so I think that's just been a huge learning curve for our family, for each one of us, but I think for me as well. Anybody else?
Sure. So for us, the Lambs, we're not a sports family, and we live in the woods. And my kids were on break already, so the full impact of all of this hasn't totally set in yet. Probably when we start the homeschooling process this week it will, but we have been outside a lot and in nature, but starting to have those questions about trusting people, and not just, are they going to let me down emotionally, but are they going to infect us So we're like talking to our kids about this weird dynamic of, well, we can't go to the neighbors. We can't be with them. And it's such a strange paradox because as believers, we have been told, you lay down your life for your neighbor, you share with them, you give to them. And so it's been an interesting, they're like, wait, what? We don't totally get this. So it's an interesting process we're all kind of working through mentally, and we'll see how we do on the other side of it. I don't know. I think every day we're just kind of figuring out little baby steps and what we need to be doing with them.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, Brandy?
I think for our family it's been interesting because we're a sports family too, and I was actually coaching soccer for my son's team, and we got one practice in before all this happened. So that was definitely a bummer. But I think at first it was, it was kind of like, oh, this might happen, and it might be this for a couple of days, couple of weeks, and now we just really don't know. So we're just adjusting to that new dynamic. We started our school this past week. They do much better with technology than I do, so that's been a good thing. I think for me, the harder part has been that I am, my love languages are touch and time, and I can't be around people in my small group and in my circle of friends and hug them and share a meal with them. Like this is my daily occurrences. Like that is how I do my work often, is meeting with people over coffee or food, or having them sit around my table, or sitting around a campfire together. And so to not have these places that feed my soul has been really, really hard for me. And having to lean on technology, which is something that I've kind of stepped away from. I've been off of Facebook and social media for a couple years, and even my friends who've moved away, they know I really struggle to maintain phone conversations with people. So I'm really stretching and trying to do that because I desperately need to stay, involved in the people that I love's lives, and really, really longing for the day when we are all back together. I think sometimes it's easy to take it for granted, oh, it's Sunday morning, I got to go to work, and yeah, it's going to be great, I'm going to see a lot of people, but I'm so exhausted afterwards. And people who know me well know that I'll say, Sunday afternoons, I am just exhausted after talking to 300 people, and but right now I so miss that, and I miss that chance just to hug people and shake hands, and just being physically close to people has just been hard to not be able to do that. And so I think that's just been a process of grief for me, but also renewing this desire to be together. And kind of like in your sermon, you were talking about, we're not made for this. We are not made for isolation. We're not made for not being able to physically contact people, and even in the grocery store, trying to judge, am I 6 feet away from that person? I have noticed, though, at the park, kind of walking, with proper social distancing, and meeting people, or even at the grocery store, people look you in the eye, and they're searching for that connection. And I just find I'm normally head down doing my thing and not really connecting with random strangers, but I found myself this week, when I've been in those situations, really connecting with people's eye contact, and smiling, and even saying something to them, and them speaking to me, and just that's been a little bit of feeding my soul. So I'm thankful for our virtual connections. I've been in several virtual meetings this week, and that definitely helps to see people's faces and not just hear their voices. But yeah, I'm all about ready for this to be over and us to be back in physical space together again. There's just something really sacred about that. So those are my thoughts. How about you, Devin?
Well, for me, I would say a couple different sides to it, but one being we don't have kids, and so we're not oh man, now we have all these kids, we have to homeschool, we have to figure all this out. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that element, which I know a lot of people are dealing with, and that's a huge challenge of time and entertainment and education at the same time. But for us, another element is that a lot, all the social interactions and stuff have just been canceled. There's 2 weddings that we are going to be going to over the next several weeks, and both of them have been canceled, have been postponed.
Wow.
So that really just sucks for those families and for everyone that's going. figure out, what do you do? You've been looking forward to something like this for so long. You've been preparing and planning and everything. And, now it's just isolated. And so, and one of the things that I've been dealing with personally is just like staying motivated, because it's difficult. People help motivate me, and knowing that events are upcoming help motivate me. And so when those things are removed and it's just me, and there's not any meetings or there's not youth group and there's not Young Life and there's not like anything to look forward to spend time with students or to spend time with people, it makes it really difficult for me to stay motivated. And I've been finding that, like, what am I looking for to get me going? You know what I mean? What am I doing? Or am I relying on someone else to get me started on something? And so it's just been really interesting in relying on God in that, and that a lot of times I feel like when we're socially isolated or however, it takes just a trust and kind of the routine, the good routine of spending time in the Word, and the good routine of doing what we know what is the best thing for us to do, whether we feel like doing it or not. And then we reap the benefits of having done it, even though we didn't want to do it. So I think that's kind of where I am personally with that.
A lot's changed in your ministry.
Yes, so I've been trying to maintain a rhythm by coming to work and just working on some things like cleaning. But the positive thing is that we had a virtual birthday party with one of our family members, so that was good. And then I've met with my grandson every day to tell him stories for an hour. And to get a 2-year-old to sit down with me for an hour and listen to stories has been wonderful. My son has done 2 different Zoom meetings with the whole family, so we've had like 12 people on. So that's been really helpful because I live alone, and so you can really imagine what it's like not to see a soul in person. And so no hugs, like you were saying, I miss that. One thing that's been a struggle is that my daughter and her husband went to San Francisco, and so he was tested for the virus because he came home sick. And so they heard that it would be 3 days and the test would be back, and now we're on day 5 or 6. So they haven't heard, which has made my daughter-in-law stay home because she's expecting. And she's also in healthcare. She's a PA. But we can pray for them because in California, one of my son's friends got a $500 fine for being too close to someone the day before yesterday. Yeah, so this is, a new reality. I think the thing that I'm getting out of it positively is being grateful for community when I've had it, and just realizing what a gem community is, and family times, because I just went having 2 families come and visit me for like a week straight. So I'm really full of gratitude, and then just asking God, what do you want me to learn from this? And so just feeling open to that. But yes, ministry's changed. So that's about it.
All right, Chaz, how about for you and your family? What's it been like the last couple weeks?
Yeah, I'm tend to be someone that's really comforted by rhythms. I like predictability and unpredictability, but I like certain things to be there every week. And, it's like, I need to exercise. I need to, have coffee in the morning. These things are critical. But I think for me, I think over the last 2.5 years, so much has been disordered and disrupted just through journey God has had us on. And so I think, I told someone the other day, I said, whatever suffering you've been through in the past and whatever you've got from that, where the Lord has painfully and yet graciously stripped you of some idols and things like that, it prepares you for the next one. And I definitely, I've been shocked at the confidence I've felt. If anything, I feel reluctant to share that because I want to enter into people's fears, but I feel, I have hope. I feel God this is what he does. This is, Genesis, the Joseph story, this terrible situation, and God always does divine judo on evil. And it's just amazing that he shows his glory and power more through working through weak vessels, but also by even taking what was meant for evil and using it for his glory and our good, even though it may hurt. So, I'm hopeful. I feel like through the years there's been a low view of ecclesiology. We've seen that. Attendance has dropped. Gathering together has just not been an important thing, because we've contributed to that. But the reality is the one thing that was not good prior to the fall was for man to be alone. And so I am hopeful that people understand that there's some arrogance in us that believe that we didn't need one another. And I'm totally guilty of that. I am extremely introverted. I have a lot of social anxiety. I'm in a weird job for all that. But so I get it. And I tend to I get myself isolated quickly and don't even realize it. And then all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, I'm pretty isolated at the moment. So I think this is good. This is a good, healthy pause in the sense, as you were saying earlier, for all of us to, at least in that sense. So I say all that recognizing that I fully understand there's a lot of hurt going on.